What's going on, everybody? It's JT here. If it's your first time coming to the channel, welcome. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you like the content. Today, we have two wonderful guests. We have Austin over at xBacked, and we have Dojo with Pact. xBacked is a lending and borrowing and a stablecoin protocol currently in testnet, and Pact is one of the leading dexes on Algorand currently. So, without further ado, let's bring them both onto the show. How you doing, Austin? And
Doing
we've
well,
got Dojo.
JT.
How you doing?
Really good, mate. What about you?
Welcome to the show. Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be talking to Austin again. It's great to be talking to a bear for the first time. So this is fantastic.
Yeah, happy to be here, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, likewise,
awesome.
mate.
Is it morning time over there in Australia currently?
Morning time,
Nine-
absolutely.
Morning
9 a.m.
time.
Not too bad.
Awesome. Well, good morning to the two of you. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the show. I've spoken to Austin once before, so let's go directly to PactFi first, and then I'll bounce back to Austin for a couple questions. But I am very curious on the origins of PactFi and how you got into the space and why you decided to start with a AMM or a DEX on Algorand.
Yeah, awesome. And when I say we, myself, the CTO at Pact and a few other advisors in the team, sort of first met up around about July, August of last year. So we've been at it for a little while. We came together because we saw the opportunity. We were all pretty bullish on the tech of Algorand as a blockchain. But clearly, at that point, it needed some things built on top. So we saw it as an opportunity to build up a really good team and deliver some really strong fundamentals that are needed for any chain to succeed. And in the DeFi space, that's particularly the DEXs or the AMMs. And obviously there's the other DeFi. Projects like stablecoins, lending, money markets, like they all need to be here for people to take interest. And so we saw that we weren't too far behind Tiny Man initially, but we decided to stop and reuse some of the features of the latest Teal release at the time. So that sort of put us behind a couple of months, but we think we were able to deliver a much more user-friendly protocol because of that.
Yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic product. The user interface is super friendly. A lot of us in the community know that there are no fees for the liquidity. You don't collect fees, right? All the fees go to the liquidity providers, correct?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So, for a lot of us that like to provide liquidity, it's been a great place to collect, all of the yield, not just a portion of the yield. So it's truly fantastic. So I like what you're doing there. But I do want to ask about the phase 2 of the ANIUS or whatever rewards that started, I believe, yesterday. Is that correct? I believe it was June 6th was the post.
Tuesday, 2 days ago.
2
Sorry,
days
I
ago.
just had to stop and take bearings of what day it was.
No, that's totally okay. I'm curious, how long do those programs run for? And do you have any idea if TVL might drop once those rewards run out? Because it's always a question that I've had in my head that it's fantastic what the foundation is doing by supporting DeFi currently. But I'm really curious how much of the growth is organic growth and how much of it is just there for the extra rewards and might, kind of be mercenary LPs and just leave once rewards dry up.
Look, it's a really good question, and the reality is that most people participate in DeFi because they want yield opportunities.
Yep.
They want to put their money to work. That's the reality of decentralized finance. AMMs are no different. Algorand is no different. What the foundation are doing very gratefully for the early projects on Algorand at the moment is, as we're getting a chance just to establish maturity, product market fit, it gives us a chance to build up some cred, you could say, before launching a token. So on other chains, a lot of the yield is paid out in a native token. Now, in the longer term, that will be no different on Algorand. So Pact bonus APRs will be paid in Pact, and I'm sure other products will go down a similar path. What the foundation are doing for the moment is really giving us a buffer. So their support is fantastic. It's essential, I think, to all of the projects in the ecosystem at the moment. But it won't be a forever thing by any means. So that will be the impetus that the projects need to. There's never a great time to launch a token in a sort of downtrending market, but as I've spoken with a lot of people, it's a lot better to put out a token when things are sideways and boring than right at the very top in December of last year, when it would have been the whole market was down only for 6 months.
Yep. Don't we all know it? Don't we all know it?
So fortunately, the foundation are really great in that regard, and they see us, or they see themselves as being able to provide a buffer while we all grow together.
Mm. And I think, just to chime in, I think there's been a lot of discussion recently on Twitter more broadly about sustainable yield and what that looks like in the future. Because I think, as liquidity mining and that sort of thing wears off, because it's not a great thing for the community, especially if like your emissions schedule for the tokens, your native tokens, goes through the roof. People are going to get punished. So at xBacked, something I've just been thinking a lot more about recently is, sustainably sourced yield, right? I think the Aeneas rewards programs are really useful, as Dojo said, for bootstrapping a protocol. But longer term, once you are sort of on the path to product market fit and that sort of thing, you can't rely on that. And I think some projects that we've spoken to recently doing this fairly well are mstable and just mstable actually. They're focusing on sustainably sourced yield and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I've not heard of mstable, so I'm going to leave myself a note right here and check them out. But let me pose a question to you, Austin. Last we spoke, you're currently in the depths of building, and according to the roadmap, it looks like mainnet might be right around the corner. Could you speak a little bit more on what your project is for any new listeners that I have that might be unaware, and how close are we to mainnet?
Fantastic. Yeah. So xBacked is building an over-collateralized stablecoin, so not an algorithmic stablecoin. We've never said we're algorithmic, but we're over-collateralized and much. Oh, sorry about my dog.
That's okay.
And much more similar to MakerDAO's DAI or any other over-collateralized stablecoin. And yeah, like the roadmap said, we would be live at the end of Q2. And we have completed 2 audits, one with runtime verification and one with another auditor, Ulam Labs. Both were very, very good, and both sort of approached the audit differently and made different recommendations, which was really great. Like runtime was very top down, and then Ulam very bottom up. And so those have both been completed. And now we're sort of prepping for launch to be ready at the end of June. But recently, given market events and that kind of thing, we've been advised that maybe waiting isn't the worst thing, right? And just refine our UX a little bit more. I think the NFD launch, they launched a really, really well-polished product.
Yes.
And
fantastic.
I think, yeah, it's awesome. So I think, like, although the smart contracts are ready, I think we can improve the UX a little bit more and also refine a few of our growth initiatives to start building that momentum towards launch. So it's going to be probably a little bit later than the end of this month, but for good reason. And I think the community will benefit from that.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And you brought up NFTs, so I have to pose the question to both, if you will. Both your products be integrating NFTs to the app?
Hey, we're already there in testnet.
Oh,
So
you're
if you
already there in
connect,
testnet. Yep.
yeah, so
Yeah.
xBacked, anywhere you see an address will integrate with NFT. Yeah.
And how
Yep.
about you, Dojo?
We've just dragged an item into our upcoming sprint to do so.
Perfect.
Personally, I spent a lot more algo than I was expecting to a couple of days ago, and got a little bit carried away reserving some addresses. So I think it's a fantastic product. It's sorely needed.
Yeah, there are some really interesting ones listed for like 100 million algo on the on the NFT marketplace right now, which is pretty wild and out there. But yeah, moving on though, let's talk about partnerships a little bit. Pact is partnering with Fireblocks, and that is going to be essentially a new wallet into the Algorand ecosystem. Is that correct?
Essentially, for all intents and purposes, yeah. So for those that don't know, Fireblocks is an institutional custodian slash software provider slash wallet provider that that basically exists so that institutions and funds that want to deploy their capital can do so in a safe way that adheres to their internal compliance and risk policies. If you go to a big bank, not necessarily saying there's a big bank lined up or anything like that. But if you go to a big bank, you're not going to really get much buy-in if you say, your investment officer has to run a hot wallet with the bank's, Bank of America's funds. That's not going to fly. So Fireblocks exists so that they can offer a service that is end-to-end with asset custody and secure integrations into Web3, basically.
That's awesome because you could just imagine the type of liquidity that could flow into the space from institutional investors that, as you said, are probably not going to maybe use the MyAlgo wallet or the Para wallet. They don't want to use a hot wallet. But actually, on that topic, a lot of people in the community know that you've been working on improving or actually fixing the problem with ledger support on Algorand dApps. How is that moving along?
Yeah, it's a timely question. I was about to put out an update in the coming day or two. So there's a two-part answer to this question. The first part is that we at Pact actually got the code change completed about a month ago, right on time. The part two answer to this question is that it's very much a good thing, but just the timing of it has skewed timelines a little bit. But Algorand have now got a formal long-term partner to support the ledger application that they're paying to basically own and support over the long term. So great outcome. But that new agency now is going through our code changes to make sure that they're happy with it. They're doing a bunch of testing, and basically it's just added, I think, maybe another month or two on top of the delivery date. So we get to sort of wipe our hands of it after this. Algorand will have a new long-term partner that everybody can point and say, hey, we need these changes in the future, etc.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and I know a lot of people in the community appreciate you for doing that. I mean, I've got one of my ledger boxes right here, and I can't use it for most of the things that I do in the Algorand ecosystem. So that's really great to hear. Could you foresee maybe, I know it's out of your hands now, but probably like end of summer maybe for ledger integration?
I would hope so. So
Yeah.
So
of course, it's speculation. I get that.
Yeah, look, I've been speaking with the Algorand team closely. They're more than happy for us to sort of give this update, but the one cautionary tale is, let's try to not put tight timelines out just yet. So, this is a little bit of the grey area of this handover process.
Of course.
It's a little bit uncertain how long it will take now.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that anyway. Continuing with the idea of partnerships and even security, xBacked just recently partnered with Nimble, and Nimble is a decentralized insurance protocol. I haven't done too much research into Nimble. Actually, I want to get them on the show, but could you speak a little bit more onto that partnership and how it'll affect users that will be using your platform in the future?
Yeah, definitely. So I started talking to Adam a few months ago about partnering with Nimble, and there's a few different partnerships in the works there. So one is like having XUSD as an accepted form of payment into Nimble. Um, and then the other is, of course, like insurance for the xBacked protocol and that sort of thing. So it's still pretty early days, but having something like that coming to Algorand is huge, and especially their partnership with the Algorand Foundation, where 50% of your insurance premiums would be paid for, is huge. So I'm really, really excited for what they're building and what it means for DeFi on Algorand. But at the moment, it is still fairly early discussions.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. And you did mention kind of a question that I was going to ask about the stablecoin. So I guess we'll just move into that a little bit. But I was curious on if xBacked had been working with any sort of commercial or business partners to get it accepted, kind of like AlgoFi has done with Lofty AI that's now accepting it. I believe AlgoGems recently integrated it. And I think that's an important piece in maintaining the peg is having real world uses for it as opposed to just using it to gain yield somewhere in the system. Because I feel like that if the yield dries up, it can be kind of squirrely if there's no other demand for something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So our head of growth, Denvin, she has been very ambitious with the companies she's been approaching and speaking with. So there is a lot in the works. I think there's an Australian-based buy now, pay later company that's actually working with Algorand. So we're talking to them. And then we're also talking to, I asked Lofty what they would need to see from XUSD to have it integrated there as well. And they said they just need significant volume. So because the way they work is if they receive payment in XUSD, they're immediately going to sell it and settle it in like USDC. So they just need to see significant enough liquidity and also demand from their community as well, right? So we've got that conversation ongoing as well. And then, like you said, I think there's two sides of the stablecoin market. There is those that come and open vaults and mint the XUSD and supply it as liquidity or go and use it for something. And then the other side is those that just buy it off of DEX to then supply at like a Folks Finance or to then use on Lofty and that sort of thing. So we're also just thinking fairly thoughtfully about what that first type of user needs and why they actually come and mint XUSD. And that leads to some pretty interesting conclusions, I think. I think my view since we last spoke has kind of matured a little bit in the different types of niches a stablecoin can have. So I think, one niche is niche use cases. So like we've been speaking to Alandia as well for NFT lending. So they're building V2 at the moment. So we're just keeping in touch with them. So that's a niche use case. But I think the other direction, like thinking about why people mint XUSD and working to find a niche there is far more important to us at the moment, I would say, because that's a vector for our initial growth.
Yep.
And it also just brings more value to the community, right? Rather than serving the same sort of segment that AlgoFi folks and other protocols serving, we can serve a slightly different segment. So that's what we're looking at.
Awesome. And I'll pose this next one to you, Dojo. What is next in the roadmap for PactFi? What could users expect down the road, maybe a couple months down the line, or even just for the rest of the year?
So I'm finally able to announce, or I snuck it out on Twitter a couple of days ago, but we've just finished an audit for a stable swap contract. So we're going to be able to team up with some partner projects to offer a much more compelling swapping service or efficiency. So look, we're going to try and target pools of XUSD, and with the stable swap, we're also going to try and target liquid governance pairs, so that people can get in and out of dynamic algo and G algo from base algo as cheaply and efficiently as possible. We think that's really important in promoting DeFi growth in Algorand. So it's really all hands on deck for that stable swap at the moment. Over the month or two beyond that, we've got another route. We've got another contract which has actually already finished audit. We're a little bit frustratingly just waiting for an Algorand consensus update to be able to use it. So we built it a little while ago. It's been sitting around on the shelf for a small period, which is quite frustrating. But that'll be the next thing that we've got in the next sort of month or two as well. So it's going to be a busy couple of months for us.
Awesome. And will Pact eventually be a tokenized project, or are you not planning to launch a token?
Yes, we're gonna get a token out. It's going to be a governance token for governing. But that could lead to a whole heap of different places. But yeah. Yes, we not only do I think the community want projects they can use, but the Algorand community also wants projects that are in Algorand that are high quality that they can invest in. I think so. I think it's important that even if it's not us or if it's not xBacked, but over the coming period, projects on Algorand consider putting tokens out, even if it may not be peak bull run mania.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, with the macro conditions, who knows when we'll get back to that mania phase of a market again. But or if we'll ever get to something like that in the next couple of years. But regardless, do you have any sort of timeline for the token release?
We're hoping July, August. So yeah,
fantastic.
Like I said, we really are going to have a busy couple of months ahead.
Awesome. And I recently noticed Folks Finance, which is a fantastic lending application, started accepting LP tokens from certain LP pairs from PactFi as collateral. And I thought this was a brilliant idea that I actually really never considered. Are we to expect more of those LP pairs to come out on various lending protocols and maybe even xBacked in the future?
So I would love to see our LP tokens accepted as many places as possible. I think it's a big vote of confidence and trust in the project. So we've had a couple of other projects approach us and ask to start thinking about similar patterns for them. We'd dearly love to be able to do the same on xBacked and other partner projects as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those underserved niches at the moment.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, to be honest. It really does create another level of capital efficiency in the market for real. So moving on, though, actually, I'm very curious about DAO structures for both of your projects, because I know both of you in prior appearances, I think on the Recoup, you had mentioned Prismatic, and I'm curious on how it all ties together with the three projects and your two governance models.
Great question.
I guess we'll pose it to Austin first. Sometimes I don't realize who I should pose the question to when it's posed to both of you.
Mm-hmm. So you're asking specifically how like the DAO tooling will work, or
yeah, just I guess more broadly on how the governance structure will work. And the DAO tooling, and you can just expand from there.
It's a good question, because I think your governance structure can sort of feed into your core tokenomics, right? We saw Vote Escrow with Curve was a very popular model in the last 6 to 12 months. For xBacked, we're actually approaching our governance structure like in a pretty simple way. We're not doing anything too crazy. We did investigate doing Vote Escrow style governance, but one of our investors is Delphi Digital, and we spoke with them, and they were like, "Look, VE models actually have a lot of problems. There are some tweaks you can do, but at the same time, it's probably not appropriate for xBacked. So we're just going with a fairly basic governance model. And then in the future, as new models are discovered, which I'm sure there will be, we'll be in a good position to potentially shift the way our tokenomics and the way our governance works. But we're just going to start with a fairly vanilla base layer of governance and just get started with that. Because the other thing as well is Prismatic is still probably the only project serving this sort of niche on Algorand at the moment. And even then, like the DAO tooling they're building might not suit every project. So some projects might need to go and build their own contracts and that sort of thing to accomplish what they need.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point, Austin. It could be all very well and good to get together and come up with very very complex and convoluted effective governance plans and models and strategies, as we might do if we had all of the tooling that exists on Ethereum at the moment. We might get to the end of that planning and then realize, hey, that's still 2 years away from a technology perspective. That's a number I just pulled out of my backside, so don't quote me on that. But it really is a case in ecosystems like ours of aiming initially for something. The MVP, minimal viable product, is a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. I prefer minimum lovable product. So we need to shoot for that MLP.
I like that.
And iterate over time.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'm going to ask a question that's a little bit more broad, not too specific to either of your projects, but I'm curious on how either of you feel about the 2 current Algorand governance questions that are currently being decided on this quarter. I guess we'll start off with Dojo, if you have any opinions on it.
It's extremely contentious at the moment, isn't it? Look,
it is. So I'm honestly very curious to hear a lot of perspectives on it, because there are people that have brought up points that have honestly shifted my opinions a little bit. So,
yeah, look, in the discussions that some of the projects had with the foundation in the lead up to it, we stressed that whatever was proposed needed to be simple. So, if the proposal had been an algorithm with 25 different if then else statements about when you can actually justify for governance rewards and things like that, that would have been just as bad. So like what needed to go to vote was just a simple proposal. That's what went to vote, for better or worse. We, being a DeFi protocol, obviously will benefit from any and all assistance in terms of rewards and in extra incentivization for people to use the product. I totally appreciate that there are people who are currently governing that don't necessarily want to do that, but I think in the long term, I am a big believer that the current risk-free payment is too high to sustain the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, as with everything, it might take a couple of goes to get there or to get the right answer. This is another example of something that will need to be iterated. It's a very complex, high-risk area to touch, and I don't think anything that changes or doesn't change will stay the same for long, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have anything to add to that, Austin?
Not really. I mean, I raised this late last year that the risk-free rate for Algorand was pretty good. So why would anyone come and use DeFi protocols? I think, I agree with Dojo's point. Simple is good. And to be honest, it feels a little bit rushed with what they're doing. Like originally, the proposal had like a 10 million TVL qualifier metric, and they just dropped that to 1 million. Like after voting had been open and that sort of thing. So it feels a little bit rushed to me. And I think I would prefer everything stay the same rather than rush something. But to Dodo's point, it's good that at least they're iterating on this and thinking about the problem. So I think directionally, we're on the right path, but I'm not quite sure the current solution is the best. And I feel like most people sort of agree, like, this is in the right direction, but yeah. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I kind of lie in the same spot as well. It's good intentioned, and I am happy to see those to know that those discussions are happening at the foundation level. But yeah, I do agree that it does seem a little bit rushed. But let's talk about TVL more broadly, because Algorand still is probably number 30 or so chains on DeFi Llama, and I know we're in a bear market, but what needs to change for Algorand's ecosystem to climb up those ranks a little bit?
It's a very good question, because in terms of algos locked or at all-time highs, like that graph keeps on going. But in terms of dollars, we are lagging massively behind. So I think a fairly bullish catalyst is Wormhole coming to Algorand at some point, I think in the next couple of months. I think that'll be good, because that, for the first time, allows people to come across from a bunch of other chains that have a lot more liquidity, and it also allows for more dynamic partnerships, right? So I think that is a really important catalyst. I think the ledger is an important catalyst, because it gives larger investors a little bit more confidence in that their transactions and all that is secure and their funds are safe. And I think, people have spoken a little bit about USDC on-ramps lacking, like it's not at Binance, FTX, and that sort of thing. So I think, changes there would be very positive. But yeah, I would love to also let Dojo chime in with his thoughts.
Yeah, look, I echo those sentiments. I think I've spoken about them at length on Twitter and on other calls as well. The one thing I will add to that is for people that are external to Algorand, there's a very, very big risk premium that needs to be paid to target them for day zero usage. And what I mean by that is that day zero, nothing's proven. It could all it could go very badly for people. As projects exist for longer, that risk premium reduces. So, for instance, I've seen Taiki Maeda, who's the DeFi farmer who has lots of YouTube videos and paid groups and things like that. A couple of months ago, I saw people like him saying, "Oh, look, we're seeing good numbers on Algorand to target. It might be a little bit risky for us at the moment." Whereas on his recent clip, a week or two ago, he's now sort of saying, "Look, I have faith in them. I'm putting my own money in now." That's the type of attitude that won't change overnight. But that risk premium is coming down to enter Algorand over time, which is also key.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, this kind of circles back to some of my thoughts about governance, because we just had the first quarter of these new innovations like AlgoFi's Vault and AlgoGuard and Folks Finance. And I kind of had the belief that the first period would be, not that big, because people wanted to make sure that the protocols went, the first 3 months smoothly, and then more and more money would roll in over time. So I kind of do agree that question A was rushed, and that maybe we should have waited to see how these new innovations that just popped up played out naturally before ramping that up. But those are just my thoughts on that. But moving on to another more broad question. Are you guys both going to Decipher, and how do we feel about that? Because that also seems to be another contentious thing in the ecosystem, where some people, are very on board with it, and others are, not, to put it lightly.
So personally, I would love to go. I would have loved to have gone last year. A few things got in the way of that happening. It's a little bit harder for us here in Oz to sort of get to heaps of conferences around the world, because it does add up and become very expensive quite quickly. So we're not at consensus at the moment. We missed a few others this year. From my perspective, I think it's important that, having been on mainnet now and wanting to be seen as one of the blue chip Algorand products, I think it is important that I get there to Decipher. And I guess the bear outfit goes out the window then, but
You'd be making a big reveal.
I think it is important, yeah.
Can wear one of those horse masks or something. Yeah, to Dojo's point, like, it is time consuming and expensive to get from Australia to other places in the world. And for me as well, I'll feel a lot better going to conferences once xBacked is live, right?
Of course.
And it's also something we need to consider with burn and that sort of thing at the moment. And in terms of the location, I think it is definitely an interesting and fairly polarizing location. And to Dojo's point, I really want to go and represent xBacked and also meet all the other projects and the community members and that sort of thing that can make it. Because there's a few that I've been speaking to for many months, and it would just be great to actually meet and get to know them better.
Good point, Austin. I've been speaking with Ben from Folks and Riley from Guard and all sorts of other projects for a long time now. That it will be one of those strange encounters where you have seemingly known people for a long time and then have never met them. So it'll be nice.
That's exactly what Decipher was last year for me. It was putting real faces to profile pictures for the first time, and it was just it was so bizarre. Very interesting experience. But yeah, I totally agree. I do want to make my way out there. Actually, looks like David from Crypto for Change is tuning in, and we're trying to get our show, The Next Block, out there and go live in Decipher. But it looks like we're going to have to learn how to do the bear for the show, or maybe even turn our NFT avatars into some like real life moving object, which would be actually amazing. If you want to send me how you did that, I would definitely look into it. But that being said, another one of our guests actually brought up Wormhole as well, and I believe it was you, Austin, that brought it up. But the question is posed to Pact, but I think it could be posed to both of you. Will Pact support Wormhole bridged assets? And yeah, it really could be posed to both of you because, in theory, xBacked could accept them as collateral.
Yeah, I think with no doubt at all, we will absolutely be accepting Wormhole bridged assets. Their scale on other chains is very, very impressive. For us to not accept them would put us at a big disadvantage.
Of course.
There will be other, both, I guess, decentralized and centralized bridges coming. And we can't just blindly accept all of them. However, having said that, Pact is entirely permissionless at the same time. So anybody can seed pools with assets that they own. We have no control or say over that. In terms of asset pairings and pools that we might be, I guess, supporting and incentivizing and targeting the extra rewards to, that's the area that yes, we do have control at the moment until we have more of the governance and DAO tooling in place over the longer term. So we can't just blindly say, hey, every bridge is going to be fantastic without doing due diligence and making sure that we think it's going to be great and fantastic. But I think Wormhole is the no-brainer for number one on the list.
For xBacked, bridges pose a couple of different risks. The short answer is more than likely Wormhole assets will be accepted. But the longer answer is, what do we do with 5 different bridges that all have different versions of wrapped ETH, right? And how does xBacked manage that portfolio backing XUSD, right? And would some of these bridged assets be more favorable to liquidators, right? Some liquidators might be like, I don't really want to liquidate and get ETH from this other bridge over here. I trust Wormhole, so I'm just going to focus on liquidating ETH positions with Wormhole collateral, right? So for us as a stablecoin, it poses some unique risks. Another one is, Wormhole, while being one of the best bridges, did have a massive exploit earlier this year and was bailed out by Jump. If that happened again, I'm not sure Jump would be able to do the same thing. And if that happened to other bridges, they might be supported by not as well capitalized investors and that sort of thing. So if that was to happen, all of a sudden, a potentially large chunk of the assets backing XUSD could disappear. So it's just really important we manage that risk and think thoughtfully about it. To Dojo's point, Wormhole is like a very, very well-respected bridge, so I think it's highly likely we integrate it into xBacked. But other bridges will definitely need to be, thought about before we add it in, like a lot. And also, we need to control carefully the amount of XUSD relying on bridges and what that might mean. So that's how I think about the problem.
Fantastic. And we've brought up bridges a couple times, and we have another viewer also bring up a question about bridges posed to you, Dojo. It's a little long-winded, but essentially what they're getting at is, do you think EVM compatible L2s like Milkamada, Brightside, and we mentioned wormhole bridges and just things of the sort, how do you think they're going to affect TVL on Algorand? Do you think it's going to be the boom that some of us might be hoping for, because the TVL has been a little bit lackluster for a lot of us holders here?
It's a good question. I think Algorand is for the short to medium term, I believe. This is with no insider knowledge, just looking at the facts from the outside in.
Yep.
Definitely getting behind it's, we are the L1 that can do it all, or strategy, versus there are other, and you look at Near, for example, who have gone and put out the Aurora co-chain, which is EVM compatible.
Mm-hmm.
How much value that brings into the native layer 1 chain is probably debatable, because I think with those EVM compatible co-chains, yes, you can get TVL in quite quickly. It's also very fleeting and mercenary. So it's an interesting question to think about. For me and for my perspective, this is purely just I am HO in my humble opinion. Anything that can be done on the native layer 1 is better, because there's less risk. As soon as you add in more code, that increases risk. So it increases networking risk, it increases packet loss, it increases extra smart contracts to deal with. So for me, the argument is, if we can do all that on Algorand and have that native layer 1 security without adding extra steps, why wouldn't we in the long term?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, to add to that, the only thing an L2 on Algorand gives you is EVM compatibility. Outside of that, it doesn't really deliver that much more utility to users. It might make it easier, like those that use MetaMask and that sort of thing can just use that. But I think the projects on layer 1 would be a better user experience because they're closer. And I also think I did have another point, but it's kind of slipped away. I think a direction we could see, thinking in the far future, is people building co-chains at the L1 level, and kind of similar to Avalanche, focus on building like maybe a co-chain that has extremely good finality, right? And they sacrifice the decentralization, so they're more centralized, but the finality is super quick. And faster finality means you're going to be able to build some more interesting products and that sort of thing. So I think we might see that direction in the future. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I think it'll be a net good, and it will get some developers more excited about Algorand. But yeah.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I mean, Algorand made the important decision to go and build the AVM instead of the EVM, And I kind of like the direction they're taking with state proofs and trying to create a truly decentralized and trustless bridge to and from other ecosystems. I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about them trying to court EVM compatibility. Like what the whole point was to create this whole new virtual machine. I get it in the short term. Like the short term part of me is like, well, it could help TVL, it could help this, could help bring attention to Algorand. I'm just curious on how it'll all play out in the long run. But I suppose that's something we could speculate for a long time. But running into the end of this period, if anyone has any questions in the audience for myself or Austin or Dojo, please feel free to let us know in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on those. And this is to the both of you. Is there anything that we haven't brought up today for either xBacked or Pact that you'd like to bring attention to for my project? I mean, for my audience, sorry.
Look, I think for me it was really just sort of getting the news out there about the stable swap contract that we've got upcoming. Phase 2 Aeneas is going to be not as lucrative maybe as our first phase in parts because with market conditions it's not quite a high growth marketplace at the moment, so we really just want to reward suitably the TVL that we have already and really just keep maturing the front end and improving the user experience and things like that. So we are going to be super busy over the next few months, bear market or not. One of the most pleasing bits of feedback I got recently was some users saying, hey, it's been great to see your Discord still active and basically know that the lights are still on. We're here, we're not going anywhere. We're building and we'll go through this.
Absolutely, that's great. Perfect. Bear markets, I've always said, are really a special time because although they suck financially for people's wallets and for anybody that might have needed to cash out of that of any particular asset, but in reality, it shows you which projects are there for the long run, or at least attempting to be there for the long run, and weren't just in it for the quick run up to the top and just to disappear afterwards. So, in my opinion, for anyone that stays around during this period, you're going to see the projects and the people that are actually dedicated to this space. Where before there's still some of it. There's still some hucksters, but the place was a little. The mania can get distracting, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Totally agree.
Absolutely agree. I think we'll be left with a lot of substance in the next 6 to 12 months. I think it'd be really good.
Fantastic. Well, let's see. Oh, we did cover this earlier, but you didn't give me you said you're going to push it back a little bit, but Ivan's asking, when is xBacked scheduled to be released to mainnet? So do you think you maybe could give a rough estimate? I know you didn't want to put an exact date on it, but maybe like 3 to 4 months?
It would definitely be less than 3 months. So
Perfect.
Originally we were scheduled for the end of June. And we're just going to be a little bit more thoughtful about our launch, Ivan.
Of course.
So I think you can definitely expect it in Q3. Like, we'll be ready to go. The product will be ready to go at the end of June. But we're just going to hold off a little bit longer and just wait for the dust to settle and wait for people to sort of get used to where the market is at, and then launch and build.
Fantastic. And we have one question here. I suppose we could pose that to the both of you. Let's start with Dojo. Any plans for a native mobile app? This is a great question, actually. I think mobile apps are a great idea. I'm sure there's certain pros and cons to it, but I'll let you answer that question.
For the user experience, I would love to. From a product and project minded perspective, it doesn't make much sense for us to do so at the moment, because there are other protocols that do it already and are doing it well. So I think it would be a high expense, low payoff plan for us. I think that there are some seeing DeFi and Para are really good options at the moment. So I think I think that's where we're going to leave our cards lie.
Yeah. I think the great thing about Web3 is, projects release protocols, and anyone can build on top of those protocols. Like I think in the long term we'll see products like Defi or Zorion or this project called Minky build really good user experiences on top of protocols. I think we'll see less protocol teams build user experience, and we'll probably see more people look to integrate with those that have much better user experiences, much better marketing skills, and all that sort of thing. In the long term, I expect a big roll up of all the UIs and that sort of thing that have been built in the next couple of years into just, you don't even know you're using DeFi. Like the onboarding experience is just totally different. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So very unlikely, similar to what Dojo said, very unlikely to build a mobile app because a community member might do it. We might do a grant for it at some point in the future, or we might look to work with one of these sort of, I guess, an aggregator of these protocols and that sort of thing.
Perfect. And we have one more question rolling in. This one is also posed to you, Austin. We touched on this a little bit, but essentially, will there be any supporters or big money backers or partners that will be minting XUSD in the beginning to supply a decent amount of liquidity?
Yeah, definitely. So investors have committed to provide liquidity at the beginning, and this is also part of the reason we'd like to delay, is because right now asking for those commitments is not favorable. So we just want to, be cautious of that and just give time for investors to sort of sort out their side before asking them to come and commit liquidity. I think that can be done under more favorable circumstances. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate how mindful both of you are in how you're building out your product, like very methodically. So I appreciate that. And if there isn't anything else that we haven't gotten to yet, I suppose we'll wrap this up. So I appreciate it, Austin and Dojo, for coming on the show. You're more than welcome back anytime. If you have any more news coming up in the future, feel free to send me an email, DM, whatever, and we'll set something up.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Not a problem. Well, take care, guys.
See you, mate.
All right, that has been my conversation with Austin and Dojo. If you liked the conversation, give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.